Picture this: a quiet suburban parking lot, a black teenager minding his own business, and a woman dialing 911 with a trembling voice, convinced she spotted trouble. What unfolds next is a jaw-dropping tale of prejudice, redemption, and a twist so shocking it'll leave you speechless. Dive into this gripping 12,000-word story that rips apart stereotypes and exposes raw human truths. Subscribe now to our storytelling platform for more heart-pounding narratives that challenge your perspective and keep you hooked until the very last word. The late afternoon sun hung low over the sprawling parking lot of Willow Creek Mall, casting long shadows across the faded asphalt. It was one of those unremarkable suburban evenings in Willow Creek, a small town just outside Raleigh, North Carolina, where the air smelled faintly of gasoline and fried food from the nearby diner. Teenagers loitered near the mall entrance, their laughter echoing, while tired shoppers shuffled to their cars, bags swinging. Among them was 16-year-old Jaden Carter, a lanky black teenager with a faded hoodie and a backpack slung over one shoulder. His earbuds dangled loosely, blasting Kendrick Lamar as he leaned against the side of a silver Toyota Corolla, waiting for his ride. Jaden's eyes were fixed on his phone, scrolling through TikTok, oblivious to the world around him. He didn't notice the woman in the beige cardigan, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, watching him from 3 parking spaces away. Karen Mitchell, 42, was the kind of person who prided herself on being vigilant. She'd lived in Willow Creek her entire life, raised 2 kids in a cul-de-sac with a white picket fence, and served as treasurer of the local HOA. To her, the town was a safe haven, a place where everyone knew their neighbors until recently. The mall had become a magnet for outsiders, as she called them, teenagers who loitered, played loud music, and made her clutch her purse a little tighter. As Karen loaded groceries into her SUV, her eyes locked onto Jaden. He was standing too still, she thought, his posture too casual, his presence too out of place. Why was he just standing there by that car? Was he waiting for someone or scoping out a target? Her pulse quickened. She'd seen stories on the news, read posts on Nextdoor about car break-ins, and her imagination filled in the blanks. Without a second thought, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice crackled. There's a suspicious person in the Willow Creek Mall parking lot, Karen said, her voice low but urgent. He's a black male, maybe 16, wearing a hoodie. He's just standing by a car, looking around. I think he's up to something. Can you send someone to check it out? The dispatcher asked for more details, and Karen obliged, her eyes never leaving Jaden. She described his height, his clothes, the way he was lingering by the Toyota. She didn't mention that the car might belong to someone he knew or that he could just be waiting for a ride. To Karen, those possibilities didn't matter. She felt a surge of righteousness, like she was protecting her community. The dispatcher promised an officer would be there soon, and Karen hung up, satisfied. She stood by her SUV, arms crossed, watching Jaden like a hawk. Jaden, unaware of the call, bobbed his head to the music, his thumbs tapping out a reply to a friend's text. He was a junior at Willow Creek High, a B student with a knack for math and a dream of studying engineering. He'd spent the afternoon at the mall's arcade with his best friend, Marcus, blowing through $10 in quarters on claw machines. Now, he was waiting for his mom to pick him up, just like every Saturday. The Toyota belonged to her, a beat-up hand-me-down from his uncle, and Jaden had been told to wait by it so she could find him easily. He glanced at his phone, 5:47 p.m. She was running late, as usual. He sighed and switched to a new song, oblivious to the police cruiser pulling into the lot. Officer Daniel Harper, a 10-year veteran of the Willow Creek PD, stepped out of the cruiser, adjusting his belt. He was a stocky man with a buzz cut and a no-nonsense demeanor, used to handling calls like this. The dispatcher had relayed Karen's report as suspicious black male in the parking lot. Harper scanned the area and spotted Jaden immediately, standing by the Toyota, still engrossed in his phone. Harper's hand rested lightly on his holster as he approached, his training kicking in. Stay calm, assess the situation, don't escalate, he told himself. But he'd been on enough calls to know how these things could go south. Hey, kid, Harper called out, his voice firm but not aggressive. Mind stepping away from the car for a second? Jaden's head snapped up, his earbuds falling out. He blinked at the officer, confusion creasing his brow. What? This is my mom's car. Harper raised an eyebrow. Your mom's car? Got any ID on you? Jaden's heart started to race. He'd seen videos online, heard stories from Marcus about cops stopping kids for no reason. He reached for his backpack slowly, careful not to make any sudden moves. Yeah, I got my school ID, he said, his voice steady but tinged with nerves. He pulled out a laminated card and handed it over. Harper glanced at the ID, Jaden Carter, Willow Creek High. He handed it back. What are you doing out here, Jaden? Waiting for my mom, Jaden said, his tone clipped. She's picking me up. Karen, still watching from her SUV, felt a twinge of unease. The boy was talking to the officer, not running or arguing. He didn't look dangerous, but appearances could be deceiving, she told herself. She stayed put, her phone ready to record if things got out of hand. Harper nodded, but his eyes flicked to the Toyota. This your mom's car, you said? You got proof of that? Jaden frowned. Proof? Like, what, the title? I don't carry that around. She's coming to get me, man. She'll be here any minute. Harper's radio crackled, and he stepped back to answer it, keeping Jaden in his peripheral vision. The dispatcher confirmed the car's plates were registered to an Elizabeth Carter, no red flags. Harper relaxed slightly but kept his guard up. All right, let's just wait for your mom, then, he said, crossing his arms. You stay right there. Jaden's jaw tightened. He wanted to ask why he was being treated like a criminal, but he bit his tongue. He'd been taught by his mom and his uncle to stay calm, not to argue with cops, no matter how unfair it felt. He shoved his hands in his pockets and leaned back against the car, his eyes darting to the growing crowd of onlookers. A few shoppers had stopped to watch, their murmurs forming a low hum. Karen was still there, her phone now raised, filming the encounter. Minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. Jaden felt the weight of every stare, every whisper. He wanted to disappear, to rewind the day and wait inside the mall instead. But he stayed put, his heart pounding, his eyes fixed on the parking lot entrance, willing his mom's car to appear. And then it did. A sleek black Audi Q5 pulled into the lot, its engine purring as it glided toward the Toyota. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Elizabeth Carter, a woman whose presence commanded attention. She was in her late 40s, with sharp cheekbones, a tailored blazer, and an air of unshakable confidence. Her blonde hair was swept back, and her green eyes scanned the scene with laser focus. She was white, a fact that made Karen's jaw drop and the onlookers' murmurs grow louder. Jaden! Elizabeth called, her voice cutting through the tension. What's going on here? Jaden's shoulders sagged with relief. Mom, this cop thinks I'm stealing your car or something. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed as she strode toward them, her heels clicking on the asphalt. She sized up Officer Harper, then glanced at Karen, who was still filming, her phone trembling slightly. Officer, I'm Elizabeth Carter, she said, her tone polite but icy. This is my son, Jaden. That's my car he's standing by. Is there a problem? Harper shifted his weight, caught off guard. Ma'am, we got a call about a suspicious person in the parking lot. Just doing our due diligence. Suspicious? Elizabeth's voice sharpened. My son was waiting for me, as he does every Saturday. What exactly made him suspicious? Karen, emboldened by the crowd, stepped forward. I called it in, she said, her voice wavering but defiant. He was just standing there by the car, looking around. It didn't seem right. I was concerned for everyone's safety. Elizabeth turned to face Karen, her expression unreadable. The crowd fell silent, sensing a storm brewing. You were concerned for everyone's safety, Elizabeth repeated slowly, her words dripping with disdain. Because my son, a 16-year-old boy, was standing by my car, waiting for me? Karen flushed, her grip tightening on her phone. I didn't know he was your son. I was just being cautious. You hear about these things, car thefts, gangs. Gangs? Elizabeth cut her off, her voice rising just enough to make Karen flinch. You saw a black teenager and assumed he was a criminal.
That's not caution.
That's prejudice.
The crowd shifted uncomfortably, some nodding in agreement, others looking away.
Jaden stood frozen, his eyes on his mom, a mix of pride and embarrassment swirling in his chest.
He hated being the center of this, but he knew his mom wouldn't let it slide.
Harper cleared his throat.
"Ma'am, I'm just following protocol. We got a call, we check it out. No harm done." "No harm done?"
Elizabeth's gaze snapped to him. My son was humiliated in front of a crowd because of a baseless assumption.
You think that's no harm?
Karen, now red-faced, tried to interject.
I didn't mean any harm. I was just looking out for the community. Elizabeth didn't look at her. "Officer, are we free to go?" Harper hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Just needed to confirm everything." Elizabeth took Jaden's arm. "Come on, honey. Let's go home."
As they walked to the Audi, Jaden glanced back at Karen, whose eyes were wide, her phone still raised but no longer recording.
The crowd began to disperse, some whispering, others shaking their heads. Harper returned to his cruiser, his face unreadable. In the car, Jaden slumped into the passenger seat, his earbuds dangling around his neck. Elizabeth gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white.
"I'm so sorry, Jaden," she said quietly.
"This should never have happened."
"It's not your fault, Mom," he muttered, staring out the window.
"It's just how it is."
Elizabeth's heart broke at his words.
She'd adopted Jaden when he was 6, after years of fostering him.
She'd fought for him, loved him fiercely, but she could never shield him from moments like this. She wanted to scream, to march back to Karen and demand an apology, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. Instead, she reached over and squeezed his hand.
"We're going to talk about this, okay? But not tonight. Tonight, we're getting pizza, and you're picking the movie." Jaden managed a small smile. "Deal."
As they drove away, Karen stood alone in the parking lot, her phone now at her side. She felt a strange mix of shame and defensiveness. She hadn't meant to cause a scene. She'd just been trying to do the right thing. But the look in Elizabeth's eyes, the way Jaden had stood there, silent and stoic, it gnawed at her.
She climbed into her SUV and drove home, the incident replaying in her mind.
The next morning, Willow Creek buzzed with gossip. The parking lot incident had been caught on multiple phones, and clips were already circulating on X. By noon, a grainy video of Karen calling 911 had gone viral, tagged with hashtags like #Karen in the wild and #racial profiling. The comments were brutal, calling her out as a racist, a busybody, a menace.
Karen's name wasn't public yet, but someone had recognized her from the HOA meetings and posted her full name in a local Facebook group.
By evening, her inbox was flooded with angry messages, and her employer, a small insurance agency, was getting calls demanding her termination. Karen sat at her kitchen table, staring at her laptop, her hands shaking.
She hadn't meant for this to happen. She'd just been scared, hadn't she?
She tried to tell herself she'd done nothing wrong, but the comments online, hundreds of them, called her a white woman weaponizing the police. She clicked on one of the videos, watching herself dial 911, her voice shrill and accusing. She barely recognized herself. Meanwhile, Jaden and Elizabeth were dealing with their own fallout. The viral video had brought attention to Jaden, and while some comments praised his composure, others were vicious, questioning why he was loitering in the first place. Elizabeth, a corporate lawyer, was used to handling pressure, but this was different. She worried about Jaden, who'd been quiet all morning, scrolling through the comments on his phone despite her pleas to stop. "People are idiots," Jaden said, tossing his phone onto the couch. "They don't even know me, and they're saying I look shady." Elizabeth sat beside him. "They don't know you. But I do. And I know you're strong, smart, and kind. Don't let their ignorance define you." Jaden nodded, but the words didn't erase the sting. He'd always known he was different, black in a mostly white town, adopted by a white mom, but moments like yesterday made it impossible to ignore. He wondered if it would ever get easier. Days passed, and the story refused to die. A local news station picked it up, framing it as a misunderstanding gone viral. Elizabeth was approached by reporters, but she declined interviews, not wanting to put Jayden through more scrutiny. Karen, however, wasn't so lucky. Her employer put her on leave, citing the negative publicity. Her husband, Tom, a quiet accountant, urged her to apologize publicly, but Karen refused. "I didn't do anything wrong," she insisted. "I was protecting our community." But doubt was creeping in. Late at night, unable to sleep, Karen Googled racial profiling. She read articles about implicit bias, about black teenagers being targeted for simply existing. She thought about Jayden's face, the way he'd looked at her, not with anger, but with resignation. It haunted her. One evening, Karen attended an HOA meeting, hoping to escape the online storm. But the room fell silent when she walked in. Whispers followed, and one woman, a black mother named Tanya, stood up and confronted her. "You could have gotten that boy hurt," Tanya said, her voice shaking. "You called the police on a kid waiting for his mom. How do you live with that?" Karen stammered, her face burning. "I didn't know he was her son. I was just..." "You didn't know because you didn't care to find out," Tanya snapped. "You saw a black kid and assumed the worst." The room was divided, some nodded in agreement with Tanya, others defended Karen, saying she was just being cautious. The meeting ended in chaos, and Karen left in tears, her certainty crumbling. A week later, a new video surfaced on X, posted by an anonymous account. It was grainy, taken from a security camera in the mall parking lot, but it showed something no one had seen before. The footage captured the moments before Karen's 911 call, revealing a man, white, middle-aged, wearing a baseball cap, tampering with the lock on a car 2 spaces away from Jayden. He'd been there for less than a minute before slipping away, unnoticed by Karen, who'd been too focused on Jayden to see him. The video exploded online, shifting the narrative. Comments poured in, accusing Karen of missing a real crime while targeting an innocent teenager. The police confirmed they were investigating the new footage, and the man in the cap was identified as a known car thief in the area. Karen's name, already dragged through the mud, became synonymous with irony. She'd called the police on the wrong person, letting an actual criminal walk free. Karen watched the video in horror, her stomach churning. She hadn't seen the man. She'd been so sure Jayden was the threat, so convinced by her own assumptions, that she'd missed the real danger. The realization hit her like a freight train. She wasn't just wrong, she'd endangered Jayden and let a thief go free. Desperate to make things right, Karen reached out to Elizabeth through a mutual acquaintance. She asked to meet, to apologize in person. Elizabeth was skeptical but agreed, on the condition that Jayden didn't have to be there. They met at a quiet coffee shop, where Karen, her eyes red from crying, poured out her regret. "I didn't mean to hurt him," Karen said, her voice breaking. "I was scared, and I made a terrible mistake." "I see that now." Elizabeth listened, her face impassive. "You didn't just hurt Jayden," she said. "You humiliated him. You made him feel like he doesn't belong in his own town. Do you know what that does to a kid?" Karen nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I want to make it right. I'll do anything." Elizabeth leaned forward. "Start by educating yourself. Read about bias, about systemic racism. Talk to people who don't look like you. And don't expect forgiveness just because you're sorry." Karen left the coffee shop shaken but determined. She enrolled in a community workshop on implicit bias, started reading books recommended by Tanya, and even wrote a public apology on the same Facebook group where she'd been exposed. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. Jayden, meanwhile, was finding his own way forward. With Elizabeth's encouragement, he joined a youth advocacy group at school, where he shared his story and connected with other teens who'd faced similar experiences. He started a blog, writing about what it was like to be a black kid in a white town, adopted by a white mom, navigating a world that often saw him as a threat. His posts gained traction, and soon he was invited to speak at a local community event. The event was held at the Willow Creek Community Center, and to everyone's surprise, Karen showed up. She sat in the back, listening as Jaden spoke about the parking lot incident, about the fear and frustration, but also about his hope for change. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, and Karen approached him hesitantly.
"Jaden," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong, and I'm trying to do better."
Jaden looked at her, his expression guarded but not unkind.
"I hear you," he said. "Just keep working on it."
Karen nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step. For Jaden, it was a reminder that change was possible, even if it was slow and messy. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for Jaden, for their family, or for their town. But she also knew her son was stronger than the prejudice he faced, and she'd be by his side every step of the way.
The story of Jaden and Karen didn't end that night.
Willow Creek remained divided, with some residents rallying for community dialogues on race and others digging in their heels, insisting the incident was overblown. The viral videos faded from the headlines, replaced by new scandals, but their impact lingered.
Jaden's blog grew, inspiring other teens to share their stories.
Karen continued her education, attending workshops and speaking out about her mistakes, hoping to prevent others from making the same ones. In the end, the parking lot incident was more than a viral moment, it was a mirror held up to a town, a family, and a woman who'd seen danger where there was none. It was a story of assumptions shattered, of apologies offered, and of a teenager who refused to be defined by someone else's fear. And in Willow Creek, where the sun still set over the mall's faded asphalt, it was a reminder that change, however painful, was always possible.